Welcome back. I'm Marina Kim with the latest news from Kazakhstan. Here are the top stories. Outraged by employing internal troops to settle the conflict in Akmala prison, relatives of its inmates have stormed the building of the Kazakh Penitentiary Systems Committee office in Astana. After just 1 hour of hunger striking, the Almaty underground construction workers got paid for 2 months. The K+ TV received its broadcast license back after the trial in Moscow, Russia. Relatives of the 166/25 colony inmates attempted to storm the building of the Kazakh Penitentiary Systems Committee yesterday. This is how outraged relatives reacted to authorities using internal troops in settling the recent conflict in the mentioned prison, during which 2 convicts died. According to official sources, one of them had put fire on himself, while another died in the hospital from incision injuries. Since Monday, inmates started mass self-mutilation acts in protest of severe detention conditions and tortures applied by prison administration.
Right after the press conference, relatives of the convicts, along with human rights defender Vadim Kuramshin and the Aberoy movement leader Makhanbet Abjan, moved towards the Penitentiary Systems Committee administration, demanding the audience of the committee's acting chairman Marat Shokpakbayev. However, he didn't come out to people, but several people came down to the hall and started pushing journalists out of the building. In just a minute, the police officers were brought in the building, who in the end used force to push out the crowd from the building. However, people don't want to disperse. A bus with police special forces unit officers arrived, and Vadim Kuramshin just told that he was threatened with new sentence and advised to disperse people home.
The Akmala regional prosecutor and the Penitentiary Systems Committee representatives were supposed to meet with the convicts' relatives in the territory of the colony. The press wasn't allowed to attend the talks. No information is available on whether or not the talks were held, and in case it did, what was the outcome. Meanwhile, relatives of the rebellious inmates still cannot get information on the names of victims and those in the hospital.
The police checkpoint was launched in a kilometer distance from the colony building, which allows in only the staff vehicles. Others must park outside and walk to the gate. More than 20 relatives of the colony inmates gathered in front of the checkpoint on Friday. They claim that the prison administration don't give any information about the convicts. We have no information on our relatives. The head of the prison administration came out and said that he won't talk to us if we keep yelling. Then I said to him that I will do a self-immolation.
The health condition of the Arman mortgage committee Yermek Narymbayev, who has recently been sentenced to 4 years, got worsened. Doctors diagnosed an eye retinal detachment. Next story has more.
In response to the situation, convicts' relatives who came from all over Kazakhstan intend to storm the office of the Penitentiary Systems Committee in Astana. Desperate people gave a press conference and proceeded to the penitentiary authorities. In particular, they wanted to talk to the acting chairman of the committee, Marat Shokpakbayev. Despite coming right on reception hour, no one seemed to be willing to receive them. I'm an intern here. How come interning with wing commander title? The convicts' relatives were accompanied by human rights defender Vadim Kuramshin and leader of the Aberoy movement Makhanbet Abjan. For quite a while, no one came out for dialogue. When the situation was getting tense, the official decided to receive only one delegate, a woman who supposedly organized this rally. However, protesters didn't agree and kept demanding a collective reception. In just 15 minutes, the security guard officers have surrounded the building, who tried to bring some order, but the Penitentiary Systems Committee officers were quite aggressive. Men who wished to stay unidentified were literally pushing out the journalists from the building. The scuffle started as police officers and protesting women, including some pregnant, confront each other. After this, only 15 people remained in the building as the rest 10 got outside. The gates are surrounded and locked up. A bus with police special force unit officers arrived to the building. Vadim Kuramshin told reporters that an unidentified officer had recommended him to disperse the protesters. The private negotiations lasted for some while and police intended to break up the crowd, said Kuramshin. However, desperate relatives didn't seem to give up. They dispersed in order to come back here on Saturday with mattresses.
South Korean Uranus CNA company had started paying off the salary debts to its employees yesterday. However, workers were paid for June only, while they haven't been paid for already 3 months. On Monday, the metro construction workers refused to go to work. By the late week, they launched a hunger strike in protest of the situation. Next story has details.
2 hours of the hunger strike was enough for the workers of the metro stroy to receive their 2-month salaries. On Thursday, they have received personal guarantees from the head of the Metropolitan Enterprise, Murat Ukshebayev. Since morning, the director of Uranus CNA company, Kwon Ken-gyun, personally went to bring money. The general contractor Almaty Metro Kurulis have found the necessary assets, as because of the hunger strike, the deadlines for the launch of the metro were put on question. At 2 p.m., a line was standing near the accounting office, but people have received money only for June. How should we calm down? You help us, you did. 50 workers have announced their decision to continue the hunger strike. After the repeated threats, the company has paid for 2 months, even though there are workers who have to receive their salaries for 3 months. Getting tired from lies, the workers have broken into the cabinet of Kwon Ken-gyun. The South Korean guests have extruded everyone from the room and locked the door. They have paid us for 2 months and starting tomorrow we'll continue working. In total, Uranus CNA owed to around 100 workers. Sinke Besenbekov, as many other workers who have received the salaries, have believed to the personal guarantees of Murat Ukshebayev. The head of Metropolitan Company promised that there will be no salary delays in the future. The rest of the debts will be paid in the upcoming days. In case of a fraud, the workers threatened to continue their action.
Hunger strike and interest holders organized a mass march to the main mosque of the country yesterday. Dozens of protesters visited the mosque to attend the Friday service to pray for the health of hunger strikers. The activists were met by not only the clergy but also police special force unit officers, who seemed to be fully prepared for the visit.
However, the arrived people were surprised by rather friendly moods of the law enforcement officers and clergy members. The crowd was escorted in the main service hall of the mosque. The imam made a short speech along with preachers calling them to forgive. It was followed by the prayer. Meanwhile, around 200 interest holders switched from hunger striking to Islamic fasting. However, the rest continue hunger striking. Today, total number of hunger strikers reached 500 people, supported by 4,000 people. Today is the 29th day of the hunger strike, which according to activists is going to continue until the OSCE official summit to be held in Astana on December this year. By majority vote, it was decided to continue because the authorities are not going for a dialogue. They don't want to meet with us. Therefore, despite the hunger striking, we paid an honor to the month of Ramadan.
The Kazakh job market seems to have a trend of employers backpaying the workers. This is confirmed by the General Prosecutor's Office statistics. The mentioned agency has instigated 21 criminal cases against the enterprises owing its employees salary payments. Around 2,000 top managers were held liable. Since the beginning of the year, total amount of debts companies had before its employees reached $612 million.
The corresponding agency has instigated 21 criminal cases over the violation of labor code. The heads of Kazakh enterprises have owed around $612 million. The prosecutors report by saying that around 2,000 managers are called for administrative liability. Based on the acts of the prosecution control, the employees have covered the salary debt in total amount of 6.5 billion tenge. The constitutional rights of around 150,000 workers have been protected. The labor unions say that the permanent delays of salary payments have resulted in the social tension in the country. The workers are forced to strike in order to receive their money. In the meantime, the authorities are not paying attention to the situation which is happening in the country. This is why the leaders of the labor unions are demanding a meeting with the president Nursultan Nazarbayev in order to persuade him to influence the businessman. In Kazakhstan, unfortunately, without the sanction of the state bodies, no one trusts into persuasions. We have collective, trade and general agreements, but they don't work because all this is entourage. I would like to propose to toughen the measures of administrative and criminal persecution. Mashkenov claims that it's pointless to counter the employers legally as the maximum fee for the debt makes anywhere in between $500 to $2,000, whereas the profits are much higher. Leaders of the Labor Confederation is confident that if the highest authority of the country will not pay attention to the current situation, the protest actions will be spreading everywhere.
Kazakh Education Minister Jansi Tuymybayev has expressed discontent over the educational institutions' preparedness for the new academic year. Majority of Kazakh schools are subject for the full repair, while education sector lacks the physics, chemistry and math teachers. The minister has set a 2-week term for his subordinates to settle the problem and threatened with dismissals should they fail.
Majority of rural schools are not prepared for the winter heating season. Meanwhile, the Education Ministry decided to introduce a new subject to the preschool and secondary school programs. A self-knowledge class was designed by Kazakhstan's First Lady Sara Nazarbayeva. However, a 2-week term given for preparation of schools for a new academic year didn't solve the system crisis, as all education institutions are overfilled. There are 2.5 million pupils in Kazakhstan, 300,000 of which are the first graders. This year, 67 new schools will be opened, while as many to be closed due to emergency condition. All appointments and distribution of funds are done locally as of the state policy. We do overall supervision, however, most of the districts must carry it out locally, because we have about 8,000 schools and it is impossible to inspect all of them.
The trial initiated by our company finished in favor of the K+ TV in Moscow yesterday. The Federal Telecommunications Agency had deprived the K+ a license for cable broadcasting in the territory of Russia. The supervising body used the fact that the company has not yet managed to deliver its programs in some regions, while in other, it broadcast in the test regime. Next report has more.
The trial was closed to public and we tried to get comments of the Russian Telecommunications Agency. Its press service promised to give comments as soon as the process was over. The prosecution claimed that K+ didn't broadcast in those regions indicated in the license, which wasn't a violation, noted the judge right away. Obtaining license is another issue, while it's a complicated process to receive frequencies and all corresponding permits and launch the equipment. Second claim was that the company broadcasts in the test regime in some of the regions. Defense claims this is not a violation as well. Since the prosecution couldn't clarify which exact norms were applied when issuing the warnings, we consider those warrants totally illegitimate. Russian claimant couldn't support its claims and requested to postpone the trial, which was satisfied by the court. However, until the next trial, the judge had ordered to cancel the warrant and return the license. In the meantime, Russian citizens may watch the K+ programs only through internet and satellite channels. The Russian telecommunications authorities didn't fulfill their promise to comment the situation after the trial was over. It didn't seem to matter much after all.
These were all the latest updates. Have a great weekend. Take care.